All right, guys, here's video 3. So far we talked a little bit about free will and why this matters. Just a reminder, if we really conceptualize why free will matters here, right? How little we have control over our choices, our environment, our genes, all these things. It gives us a framework in which to operate where we can be more empathetic to others. And again, when it comes to long-term stress, we know that people become less empathetic. And if there's one thing that society needs, we need more empathy. But more importantly, we need to be empathetic to ourselves. And that led us into video number 2. And we started to talk a little bit about how stress influences actions, how certain genes influence actions, and how this all maps onto stress and this whole sort of maze. So if we should be interested in one thing, right? If we do have free will, if you want to say we do, my whole thing is always then prove it. Because if you're telling me you want to be a certain type of person in this world, then join the fight. Who's your army? What are you doing about it? What are your routines? Are you showing up to seminars? Are you what types of questions are you asking? Again, you got one life, right? What type of questions are you asking? Where are you moving toward? And this is where we need to start this conversation, because as soon as we start understanding how stress really works, you start to see this thing, it's a machine. This thing is a machine. And if we know how the machine works, we can hack it. So I said in the last video, let's talk about dopamine, because dopamine is one of the most important hormones to understand. And I'm going to spend this last video talking mostly just about it. Because if you understand it, it will give us real headway for next week when we sit and we do the things that, and I'll show you these things and give you the science to these things about how to mitigate stress, control dopamine, etc. So what happens when dopamine is low? Well, something that many of you are familiar with, you're going to have food cravings. You're going to have addictions because you want to get your dopamine fix. You want to raise that dopamine up so that you now feel, right, a rush, or you feel better, right? You feel excitement, you feel all these things. We'll talk about what happens when dopamine is too high as well. But this leads to substance abuse, anger, impulsivity, and super high-risk behaviors, right? So when dopamine is low, this will be the person that'll go 120 miles an hour on a motorcycle. And by the way, this is a whole nother topic here, but again, when talks about free will, if you look at, there's something called endotoxin in people's bodies. It's very common, and this is more recently discovered, but it turns out that endotoxin also creates a situation where people are much more likely to do very high-risk behavior. Fascinating. So another argument about free will here. And so low dopamine and certain things in our bodies can map onto interesting behaviors. But very specifically here, low dopamine, right? Does this sound familiar? Food cravings, addictions, maybe certain substance abuse, anger, impulsivity, high-risk behavior. Those are signs of low dopamine. So when dopamine is low, it's a perfect excuse for you to go binge eat. Okay, so we want to have a situation where dopamine is normalized. Well, what happens when dopamine gets too high? Well, the most famous is schizophrenia. Now, I don't want to get into a whole conversation here about schizophrenia, but schizophrenia has a few different ways in which it manifests. So yeah, some of it is paranoia, but actually some of it also has to do with almost like a paralysis of the body. So this is very interesting. So if dopamine gets very, very high, yes, there's paranoia. Yes, there's like sort of like this almost like I can't move type of feeling in the body. But also, we talked a little bit about mitochondrial dysfunction in past seminars, and I gave you guys some examples here about how the body gets very, very rigid in mitochondrial dysfunction. But similarly, under high stress, the body also gets this extreme rigidity for interesting reasons, and high dopamine can also cause this extreme rigidity in the body. Now, I will be honest with you, this extreme rigidity in the body is more common than people think. How do I know? Because I've spent the last 3 years stretching people. I've spent the last 20 years training people. But when you have hands-on people and you know what a tight body feels like, the amount of stress that's held in that body is most of the time it's emotionally based or nutritionally based. Sometimes it can be overactivity. So when people are much too active, this creates stress that the body can't keep up with. That's more rare, but I have seen it. But most people, they're so rigid because of emotional issues and because of the SAID principle, which we talked about, which is specific adaptations to impose demands, meaning if you're sitting all the time, so your hips are constantly in that flexed position, your lumbar is constantly in that flexed position. If I put you into hip extension, well, if you spend 14 hours a day sitting, how much hip extension do you think you're going to have? That's another reason for rigidity. But again, I can't, rigidity and stress really go hand in hand in so many ways. But so when we're talking about high dopamine, the high dopamine can also create scenarios where we have this sort of paralysis and rigidity of the body. But also we're going to see aggression, and we're going to see tachycardia and anxiety and mania and insomnia. All these things are mapped onto higher dopamine levels. So just think about this for a minute. Think about these two extremes. On one extreme, you're going to see, food cravings, addictions, substance abuse, anger, impulsivity, high-risk behavior. And on the other hand, you're going to see some signs of schizophrenia, whether that's paranoia, whether that's that feeling of paralysis. You're going to see aggression, violence, delirium, tachycardia, anxiety, mania, insomnia. Where are you on this spectrum? Well, likely you're somewhere, likely you experience both, right? So like if you have a human body, likely you've experienced some version of both of these. But this should underscore how important it is to regulate dopamine. Now, how do you regulate dopamine? Well, one of the easiest ways to regulate dopamine is to know how to manage stress. Now, I have already given a very long preamble about free will. This is not a judgment about how you live your life. I'm in no position to judge. I'm in no position to judge because I'm the one saying to you, you don't have free will. It's not your fault. I'm the one saying that. But I am the one also saying that what we do have is opportunity. So if you're listening to this, and if you're thinking about this, then you really do understand how important each moment is as an opportunity to practice being somebody different. You understand how important it is at each moment to practice being somebody different. Now, how could this happen? How do I do it? What do you mean by each moment? Well, I've already given examples, right? You could choose to drive your car and listen to things like this, a seminar, a podcast. You could choose to educate yourself. You could choose to wake up in the morning and do certain rituals. And again, the whole point of next week is to show you a framework in which to operate so that it doesn't infringe on your personal time so much. Meaning, I'm not asking you to go to the Himalayas to meditate with the gurus in India for a year, right? That would be ridiculous. What I'm asking you to do is to evaluate, what I'm going to ask you to do is to evaluate your day. I'm going to talk about certain practices, the science of it and why it matters over time. So, regulating dopamine in order for us to get away from these behaviors that like sort of constantly pulling the puppet strings on us. If we're going to do it, we have to learn to regulate stress. I'm already on your side here. I'm already the one who's saying, I know how hard it is. I know the genes that are in play. I know the hormones that are in play. I know how much environment matters. I know how much brain chemistry matters. I know how much sleep matters. I know, I could go on and on here. I'm on your side. What I'm saying to you is that unless we take this seriously, unless we have the skin in the game, unless we're actually doing what we're asked to do, you will have no choice but to continue to be exactly who you are, which tends to be a person you don't want to be. Now, I want to be in the box, in that ground, whether it's today, tomorrow, or 100 years from now. I want to be the one who can honestly say, you know what? I put forward my best each day. You know, I had days that were hard. I've had years that were hard. I've had an entire decade that was pretty brutal. And I don't really care. I'll talk about my shit. I don't care. All right? I'll tell you what I have going on. But I know there's always somebody in the room who's got it worse. I know that. Right? It's not about you or me or that person next to you. Right? It's about understanding life, circumstances, biology, and knowing that we're all going through this same shit, right? We're all sort of on the Titanic sinking together. Now, this may seem like a depressing thing, but on the other hand, look at all of the beauty in the world. Look at all the things that can come forward. And all I'm asking you to do here, right, very simply, in the UTC for the past, 10 years plus, is take yourself seriously. Take your biology seriously. Take your brain seriously. Take your environment seriously. If not for you, do it for your kids. Be that person for them. Set up your home environment for them. Let your kids see your patterns for them. Oh, look, daddy or mommy never misses the gym. Daddy or mommy eat like this at home. This is what they put in the home. Now, this will be a larger conversation in future seminars, but this has to be the groundwork in which we operate, everybody. Today, I took less than 45 minutes to lay out a framework for you to seriously contemplate being empathetic to yourself, understanding your biology, understanding the stakes here for yourself and for others. You're not going to get this at Weight Watchers. You're not going to get this anywhere else. We run the UTC as a conversation based on real philosophical principles, real science, real biology, so that we can create better choices, better outcomes. But it's a two-way street, right? You have to show up. You have to participate. You have to put your skin in the game. You have to be the one to say, boom, right now, all the bullshit ends, and now it's time to begin. Okay, so if you want to show up each Sunday and learn and grow and listen to these videos, great. Seminars are $20, pay as you go. If you do the coaching with Matt, it's $4.99 for the coaching for 8 weeks. And those of you who've done it before know what a meticulous job Matt does day after day after day after day. It's an insane amount of time that he puts into putting these emails together, answering your stuff, and really catering it to you. And then obviously you guys know the amount of time that I put into preparing for these seminars and delivering you this information and putting together those ebooks year after year after year after year. So if you're in, awesome. If you're not, no big deal. No judgment. It's no free will of your own anyway. But hopefully I'll see you guys at future seminars, and thank you for listening today. Oh, by the way, if you like these videos, please subscribe to my channel. Thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. Thank you.